So we're doing Satisfying Cactus Sprint 1 review. This sprint spanned the last 3 weeks, starting on October 2nd and ending today. We took a different approach and kind of pulled apart the work efforts and created 6 sprints, separating kind of the brigade efforts, the general kind of Satisfying Cactus effort, as well as the E-chord and M-chord migration efforts. So what you see here are the burn down charts for the various work that was going on. So for the general sprints, here's the burn down chart. You see that there was an uptick in terms of stories. So stories looks like kept getting added. And so there was a slight burn down, more stories got added, and then kind of gradual burn down. If we look at E-chord, looked like it got around 50% of the stories done. M-chord, I think, also had a pretty good trajectory, but you notice there's a general uptick, which means stories were added later. I assume as stories were better understood. And then for the test framework, we know that this was kind of lower priority, so no stories were completed. And then containers, no stories completed. I think the other thing was I don't believe any performance stories were ever added. So we probably want to revisit what's going on with the performance brigade. We'll touch on that when we get to that slide later. And so let's go ahead and just walk through what we've done in this sprint. We'll start with preparing for BBWF. Scott, do you want to start, and then Jonah can pick up?
Yeah, the first item there was mine, and that was just to check the R-chord features such as BTR, parental controls, suspend, resume service, make sure all that was working. So we did that. In the course of that, I did find a bug in BTR, which I fixed.
And the rest of it was about sort of building out a pod or a couple of pods here and integrating the OLT that we're going to be using. So Shad did a bunch of work to integrate the new EdgeCore OLT that we have based on the Maple chip. And so that's running with Volta as part of R-chord now. Obviously manually integrated at this point, but the plan for the rest of the year is to automate this stuff. And then the work that I was doing was to test and verify the R-chord demo features that Scott talked about on the physical pod, and make sure we have a demo story that works. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. And then E-chord migration to 4.0.
Is Mark online? Because I know he had to drop off before. Otherwise, I can cover some stuff. Okay, I can take some stuff. As you can read, all the services have been basically upgraded to 4.0, which is good news. The other good news is that we put some infrastructure in place, both in QCT and here at the lab. Now here, the full E-chord pod at ONF, we automatically build it with Jenkins. So that means we build automatically 3 pods plus 1 global node. Pod 2 and pod 3, the local pods are not built yet just because we are recabling them. But there's no reason why they shouldn't work just at pod 1. Same thing as QCT, and all the builds passed now. There's just a misalignment with some application that should be there, and there's some work that Andrea did in the past previous days on that. So things should just start to look better. The VLAN cross connect is in place. This means we can use at least one fabric switch in each pod. Not the best we can do, but it's a good compromise for now. Max, I don't know if you want to elaborate more on the OEM and CFM, but basically the 2 CP boxes require some work, and Max is working with other guys to make this happen. And again, he can give more details on this. Last but not least, we have a good coverage of E-chord documentation. I think it's almost the first version is almost ready. It can't be code completed, but it's almost ready to be copied over on guide.opencore.org. We have diagrams, installation guide, and so on.
Okay, I know that eCord was targeting October 30th to try to get this migration in place. What percentage done do we think we're at, right? So is the 30th happening?
I think it's absolutely still in the plans. It's more, I don't have a clear idea of the development behind it. From what I can tell from the from the daily stand-ups, I would say 70% might be there. But at this point, as the slide says, there's not been end-to-end testing yet, right? So whatever could happen. But yeah, I would feel comfortable saying 70% is done.
Okay.
Yeah, to expand on that, I would say we're probably 90% done with the build and infrastructure pieces, and probably 60 or 70% done with the services, and then maybe 20% done with the testing part. Is that about right? Other eCord people?
Yeah, I think the services are, I would consider them 100% migrated, but not 100% functional, because I think there's still new functionality being added to them that was not present before. So we're migrated, but there's still, that remaining percentage is stuff that needs to be implemented.
Yeah, so I think they're going to be in great shape. It's just we need to get on the test bandwagon.
Okay, and then that's in plan for the next sprint?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
It's the only one we have before the 30, right? So we have to.
Okay. So I've added in the notes kind of where things are at. And then we'll move on to MCORD.
For the MCORD release or code build, we upgraded the three necessary services, MME, SPKD, and SPKD to the folder 1. Also for the Intel EPC, we added 4 new services: the subscriber, the UNOV, async controller, and the internet emulator. And we moved the MCORD profiles to a new Tasco engine, and except the virtual SPKD service, all the other services are now on the new Tasco engine now. And the Intel team and the Sprint team, they work together, tested their run and the EPC. So far, control plan works, data plan not. They need to make a decision tomorrow. We have a call with all tomorrow to make a decision how to move forward on that path. And the task in progress. In progress is the EPC and the service, and the playbook for the EPC. And the support build, we missed, the MCORD documentation, we missed a lot of work. So from yesterday, we started work on the documentation. Hopefully we can catch them. That's all for MCORD.
Okay, so just a couple of notes. I saw stories referencing upgrading to 4.1. So 4.1 is the release we're trying to do. What we're trying to upgrade to would be 4.0, right? So maybe we can be consistent in terms of the terminology we're using, because we're essentially moving the services to Cord 4.0 to plan for the 4.1 release. The 4.1 actually has not happened yet. And then same, I guess, question as before. I think MCORD is still targeting December, right?
Yes, we targeted in December, and we needed to make something work for the code build.
Okay, so in general, what percentage done are we at with the migration?
You mean the percent?
Yeah, so how much work is left?
You mean how many percent for compared with the entire company?
The full migration efforts, right? So we're targeting December. I know you're trying to do something for Cord build, but
Our not to say the VNF, just to say the XOS service from this video. I think except the EPC and the because only the EPC is left from the migration, because the others like the playbook, this is a new function, so even in 3.0 we don't have. So far it's only the EPC and the service left. Yeah, the playbook is a new feature for 4. It doesn't exist in 3 indeed.
Okay, so are you targeting cord build to get everything migrated over? And then it would just be testing left?
Sorry, can you say that again?
So you're targeting cord build. So by cord build, are you making sure that mcord is fully migrated over and then it's just end-to-end testing that is left?
My concern is whether EPC moved migrated or not. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing may be to let the VNF from Intel and another company work. Then only that works, we have something to demo. Otherwise, we just need, if the Intel EPC can't work with any brand, we just we only can show some software. The vision not good. So the 2 important things is the first high priority is to make the Intel EPC work with some run. The second high priority is EPC and service.
Okay.
Hey, Ian, this is Mark. I just joined. Am I too late for the eCord overview?
You are, but we got a pretty good status update. I heard things are at around 70% complete, and you guys are on track for targeting end of the month.
You got it.
Okay, and then the update we have from mcord is that they're targeting cord build with a lot of the functionality over and EPC left to migrate. Okay, anything else? If not, we can move on to the next item.
Yeah, I think maybe just a conclusion from our side, the layer 1 services are all migrated, so we are confident now. So right now the pressure may be at the Intel side again. That's all.
Okay. Thanks, Ping Ping. Okay, unit test framework.
These are mine. I think also shared with Mateo on some of them, but I don't think we did much significant work on unit test framework because the priority has been on service migration, and these were lesser priority items. So these 2 are not started.
Okay. And then just to clarify then, as we're building out the services without the framework, are we not adding any unit tests?
We cannot do unit tests of model policies or of sync steps until we take the time to implement a framework for them.
So where does that leave our coverage at?
Well, I mean, we're not going to have those tests because we decided not to implement the framework. I mean, that was the decision. So
I understand, but overall, for the system, what coverage are we at without these?
I think it's the same as before, right? It's
16%?
Okay. Yeah, there hasn't been, at least in eCord, there hasn't been significant writing of any new test cases. I think, in some of the other modules, there may be, for example, I think on some of the stuff Mateo's done with the Tosca engine, I've seen new test cases. So there's some coming there, but there's not for the service migration effort.
Okay. Now I just want to make sure that we understand our current state, right? And kind of where we're at as a result of the prioritization that we did. Okay, thanks, Scott. Let's move on to maintenance. Okay.
So the first thing on the list here is that the Cord 3.0 build was failing for a while with Ansible not being installed correctly. That was fixed. I guess there's currently, well, it doesn't say it on here, currently another problem with Cord 3.0, but we're trying to resolve that.
Yeah, so the next three of these are mine. So the first one was synchronizer could not handle exceptions that contained exceptions. That has been fixed, as well as the ONO synchronizer. There was an issue in the playbook where it was silently accepting failures to load apps. So rewrote the playbook section that did that, so it will note those errors and retry. That introduced a new bug where we couldn't sync an app more than once because ONOS will throw an error if we try to sync an app that's already installed. So we had to work around that, and that is now fixed.
The next three are mine. So 2099 was a failure in bringing up some MCORD services via the new Tosca engine. It was a misconfiguration essentially, and rightly leading to an error. But the error was masked by another bug, which is 2101, which is that errors in XOS, some errors in XOS that are not caught in the XOS layer but slip through to lower layers like gRPC don't show up in the logs and they get blocked. So having dealt with that problem, we figured out what the issue was. That's fixed. I'm still working on making exceptions show up properly. So there are two possible approaches to this problem, and I'm kind of toying with both approaches right now. Models with no custom code should not require ATIX or DECL. This was just extending the new way of implementing models with custom code to keep them backwards compatible. So if you have old services with ATIX, then they continue to work. So that's it for this set.
Okay, thanks, guys. Containers. Copy?
This was something that we started somewhere after the first week of after the sprint started, but still 2 weeks worth of work. We are working with linker networks to create a very simple OVS-based overlay network for Kubernetes, so that we can use that with ONOS and VTN. It's still a work in progress. We hope to see some deliverable in the next sprint.
In the next sprint?
Yeah, in the next sprint. The work has just started. The coding work has just started in the last week. Previous week was design. But yeah, we'll see a deliverable in the next sprint.
Okay, thanks, Gopi. Performance. So, Andy, where's the performance brigade at?
So the performance brigade is trying to decide where we want to go next. So the original objective was having a proof of concept integration of OVS DPDK with Cord for MWC, and we did that and demoed it there and had some performance numbers. And I guess the discussion has been along two paths after that. One is how to get what we did for MWC in sufficient shape that we think we could maintain it in the longer term. That, I guess, is a little bit tricky because it involves changes to OpenStack and changes to Juju, and we're talking about in the future, particularly with some of the work in the container brigade of moving away from Juju and upgrading OpenStack. And so we're trying to figure out how that fits in with the plans of the performance brigade. And then the other thread that we're talking about is new work. So the observation was made that with the integration of OVS DBTK, we got a big performance jump, but it's still far short of the capabilities of the bare metal. And so we're talking about, are there additional new performance enhancements that we want to make? So one thing that was talked about was integrating SRIOV. And so that is, I guess, we had a call just right before this one where we talked about mentioning that at Chord Build, basically having a list of kind of open questions for the community about what are people interested in pursuing in the performance brigade, and trying to identify at Chord Build the next steps and try to get some other people involved in the effort.
So in terms of the next sprint, right, that's right before Chord Build, are we expecting any deliverables from this brigade?
I expect not, other than, you know, we will have a presentation like I just mentioned at the brigade. I mean at the Chord Build.
So do I need to create a sprint for them in the next sprint?
Yeah, probably not. I don't expect there really to be any movement.
Okay, thanks for the update.
Sure.
I saw some stories around uniform development environment. I see no updates here, so I assume those were not done.
A few of them existed, but a lot of them were just bug fixes that I think probably got wrapped into the maintenance sprint.
So if that's the case, can we go ahead and not include them into the next sprint and then just hold off and add them to the maintenance? Or were you guys looking at these more opportunistically?
Yeah, I have some things that I intended to get to, but I didn't get to due to China Mobile and other and eCord stuff. So that are more forward-looking features, but it was that just didn't get done this time.
Okay.
It'll probably happen next sprint.
Okay. Deployments and build automation.
Yeah, so we deployed Arcord in entity com successfully. The build is not passing on Jenkins just because they forgot to turn on a node, but the other compute nodes all provisioned successfully, and the fabric as well. And they are very happy with this tool they got. In progress, there's a very good news that I don't know if everybody of you know, that we got some switches from QCT that can work as fabric switches for Chord. So Charles, we got two of them here at the lab. Charles did an amazing job. He tested the switches. The switches are working as expected. I wrote a patch for Chord that is under review of David Bainbridge right now to have the switches automatically recognized and provisioned from Chord, as it happens today for the actual switches. So I think it's almost there, and I would like to merge it either today or Monday. Once I do that, I'll bring the switches to QCT next week. And I want the switches to be part of the official Chord deployment in QCT. So the idea is to showcase them at Chord Build. This is one. Then you might have something more specific on this later, but basically he developed a script to automatically configure the core fabric. It works, and he deployed it on, he tried it on Flex. So that's my bad. I'm just late with reviews, and I want to look at it more before merging it, but it's a good script. It's another big piece we missed. Core platforming, China Mobile. I think we are quite at a good stage, possibly. We had, of course, a bunch of unexpected errors showing up. Last night, Zach and I did this crazy desktop sharing with them just to try to fix the last bug. And this morning, we received a pretty good feedback. So I'm quite confident that that is moving forward, at least in the right direction, and the build process, at least on the S node, almost finished. And we have updated instructions for that, but it's an in-progress work. Still to do the Intel pod automation. I've contacted these guys different times, but they always postpone it, saying they have something else to do on the pod and they don't want to touch it. So I'm holding on that. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Luca.
Yeah.
QA?
So for QA, the stories that we completed are 1964-63, which is about the creation of installation verification. After installing the pod, we created some tests, some verification and validation procedures on the pod, quick tests. That is completed. And 1961, which is about creating the Jenkins jobs for building eCode local and global virtual profile, that is done and running successfully. But it's not like continuously enabled for the global because of the issues that we have with the nodes. And the other one, the last one, 1963, which we completed, is about adding configuration procedure for pod, which Luca was just talking about a minute ago. This is after installation. There was something which was missed, and then that is integrated into the Jenkins script, and which we are testing it on Flex. So once it is reviewed, then we can put it on other pods, and then we can completely have the installation procedure there. And there are several tasks in progress. One is about the Jenkins job for MCOD. This is the blocking issue for us because we are waiting on the profile that we want to use for the Jenkins job, which profile to be used for building the job. Hopefully in next week that should be there, and then we will be able to run the job successfully. And the next one is preparing the sanity test for XOS API in MCOD. So this is blocked because of the above issue. So we have to still wait on this. And then the next two stories are from these are from Sienna, and currently they are working on the Volta project, but then I did not get any updates from them whether these were completed or not, but I had already sent them a note to update their stories accordingly. But then I will follow up with them. So that's all for the QA. And then one note is that we are still waiting on the API test that to be built on the eCode and MCode. So that will happen whenever development feels ready that it will be okay to add some API tests for the Git triggers. So that's all for QA.
Thanks, Suchitra. Fabric? Charles?
Hey. So yeah, in the Fabric feature improvement epic, we've upgraded the switches in our lab to the latest of DPA. And as Luca mentioned several times, we also tested the QCT LYA switches for basic bridging routing and VLAN tag traffic. And there are several things in progress. The first is the dynamic interface config support for segment routing. That's done by Zhonghuan, and it's under review. We also have a contribution from Infosys about IPv6 unsolicited router advertisement. That's also under review. And also Simon is working on decoupling OOT and AAA app. That we've already gone through a design, and then Simon is trying to implement the code. And then there's a open bug about interface MAC being reset to a default value during a config reload. This I'm going to take a look. And then the next one is dual homing. So so for dual homing, there are 3 open issues that include bug fixes and improvement. And then there's also one bug fixes or issues that's in progress is a packet drop issue, which seems to be related to a source MAC learning problem on the OFDPA switch. So this one we're working with Broadcom trying to identify the root cause of this. That's all about dual homing. And then the next one would be DHCP relay. Is E over there?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of stories of this DHCP relay. And I think the most important story is we support the DHCP v6, and the DHCP v6 support need to work with the RA, the router attachment. So still waiting the RA review, but after we merge the RA review patch, it should be worked. And also we have a lot of bug fix coming from Nokia and the Harmonic. And there's one in progress we still need to check with Harmonic. Yeah, I think it's.
Okay, multicast. So these are contributed by Nokia, and so 2 things. The first one is to implement a REST API to allow adding a multicast source. The other one is a bug fix that the multicast flow didn't get into the right table in a hardware switch. So we Nokia also fixed that in the OFDPA driver. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Charles V. Accord, Larry online? Okay, it would be nice to get a better pulse on what Accord is doing. So before we get into this, I want to kind of touch on MCord a bit. So an issue was raised around a Scrum Master for MCord, and just the overall picture of MCord, has that been resolved?
So the thing we talked about yesterday, you remember, that it wasn't clear who was the Scrum Master because some people didn't have a clear idea of the directions of MCord, right?
Oh, I see. And I think maybe I'm the proper person to connect both the MCord, the vendors, and our internal team. And indeed, this week I already sent out some 2 emails to clarify the basic idea for the code build. And I checked with Andy. Andy said it's a little clear than before, than last week. Maybe I continue to make until everybody are clear with that. Maybe.
Okay, so in general, is there anything we need to do, or is there progress on this and it's not a blocking issue?
Maybe internally after the stand up or set up an internal meeting to make sure everybody on the same page.
And I think we had Pimping and I had a very good conversation yesterday. Comes out that I think the documentation, not just for MCord, but I believe also for eCord, is a good way to, to have clear ideas in mind, right? Because it's something written that should be simple, understandable by everyone, that everyone agrees on, that sketch really out how things should work. So, and already talking together yesterday in front of the whiteboard, it clarified lots of stuff. So I think that's why we should start to write this as soon as possible. And now that I understood some stuff, I can start it.
Yeah. I think sometimes people just mention once, maybe the even for the internal people, like for our OF people, they just listen once, maybe not enough. After a few days, because the first time they hear this, maybe they don't fully understand. They feel this not clear what we talked in the past. So maybe we need to write down, finalize it, and have a online call and to make every item written document are clear to everybody, everybody on the same page.
Okay, so it sounds like there are some next steps. Okay, we'll move on to Satisfying Cactus Sprint 2 then. This is going to start on Monday. It'll span for 2 weeks and gets us to cord build. So I assume there's going to be lots of activities around cord build and stories there. And then after that, we'll have a 3-week sprint that'll get us into the 4.1 release. There's Thanksgiving in there too. So sprint 2 will be Monday at 2 p.m. I'm going to create the new sprints probably later today. And the new stories, I'll probably just have them, or the remaining stories will transition over to the new sprints. And so what you guys will need to do is just review those, make sure the stories are accurate, whether you need to pull in new stories, and then we'll continue this on Monday. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, Ian, a little bit of quick heads up. There is a orchestration brigade that's been active for the last couple of weeks, and its main focus has been chords integration with ONAP as a global orchestrator. This morning, we met again to identify certain large story items. Murat was suggesting we should start tracking this on Jira. So there'll very likely be an epic from Murat and a bunch of stories and some assignments to those stories. And it's likely that we'll start tracking that with the next sprint.
Okay, so I should add an orchestration brigade sprint, right?
Yeah, orchestration brigade sprint, and I don't know if you already know Murat, but I can put you in touch with him if you. He's the brigade lead.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Anything else?
Verizon? Is it Verizon?
Yeah, I heard he was at Verizon now. Okay, if not, I think we're good. There's no demo, so I think we're ready to end the call. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.